one of my colleagues is Jewish at my university, and we're friendly. And we went out for lunch, and I simply said, happy sweet new year to you coming up. And he kind of got a little uncomfortable, and I just said, are you planning on doing anything exciting for Yom Kippur? And he winced, and I thought, oh boy, I just kind of overstepped a little bit. And he said, no, I'm not observant. And I said, okay. And he goes, what are you going to do? So I told him what I was planning on doing. He says, well, I don't even have a synagogue. I said, well, I don't have a synagogue. I'm not even Jewish. And he got really uncomfortable again. So I just changed the subject. So fast forward a week later, he goes into my building, into my office, and said, I got to tell you, if a fellow Jew had kind of told me that, I would have been really upset, and I would have really been taken back. How dare you? He said, but I got to tell you that a fact that a non-Jew had to remind a Jew to be Jewish, which is something you had said in one of your talks. He goes, I was ashamed and I was embarrassed because I know what I'm supposed to be, a light of the nations. But that took a back seat to my profession, earning a PhD, college professor, and I become non-observant. And he goes, and I was so gutted, it bothered me. And he said, it's been a while, he says, but he didn't go to synagogue, but he performed his repentance and returned to God. And that's not a brag on me. It's a brag to this channel. It's a brag to you guys. It's a brag to holiness that happened. But it's exactly what you said, Rabbi. You had said it sometime.
I'm saying God owes you a big one.
No, I owe God a many, many big ones.
Good relationship.
Yeah, but it was beautiful. And, we haven't spoken since, and we probably never talk about anything on that level. But it was interesting that shook him to the core, because I guess if you're a Jew, you're always a Jew, and you can't get away from it. And he knows that. So he said he's re-examining his priorities. He got too far away with academia, which is very easy to do.
That is very good news.
So I have about 3 big questions, Rabbi, if you could help clarify. And again, this is going on our theme of Torah for the world, Torah for all. And it's one of the first things when I had met you, you had said, study divine providence. That was the first thing you did. And I was sort of like, wow, that's not what I expected. So I've been trying to do that. And it's a big shift of 57 years old, of shifting to not divine providence to that, making a lot of sense, pieces fitting in to holes that they should. But my question is, I'm reading in my studies about divine providence that Jews, righteous Jews, have direct divine providence. Wicked Jews are subject to the laws of nature, which are still, I guess, say, general providence. And I want to ask you, what is wicked, first of all? And then what about non-Jews providence?
Yeah. What have you been reading?
Oh, you name it. I mean, Tanya, and reading, just a whole bunch of books off Hebrew.com, .org, HebrewBooks.org. So it's kind of a compilation of things that I'm reading, and that's what I'm kind of hearing. And I'm a little bit stuck because the non-Jew portion isn't very clear. It gets specific for Jews and not non-Jews, and I could probably understand why, given historical context. But it's sort of a fuzzy area.
Yeah. Okay, so now ask AI, what did the Baal Shem Tov innovate on the subject of divine providence.
Okay.
You get a lot of information there. Basically, it works like this. The difference between general divine providence and specific divine providence is very, very slim. The principle behind divine providence is not that God is interested in watching everything happen. Nothing happens unless he causes it to happen. Why? Because nothing can happen without him. He's the only shaker and mover in the universe. So you can't have anything happen without divine providence. Divine providence and creation are one and the same. And God is creating the world constantly. So obviously he's aware of everything he's doing constantly. And that's because if God doesn't tell a blade of grass to grow, it won't grow. That's the real truth behind it all. So I don't know that there are any distinctions between righteous and non-righteous, between Jewish and non-Jewish, even between human and animal, or vegetable, or mineral. Nothing happens without God's direct interest because he's causing it. This is really, really fundamental because the Torah says, no evil comes from above. So don't blame God for evil. Now, wait a minute. If he's the creator, he's got to take the heat along with the praise. You can't get off like that, like, I make everything good happen, the bad, I don't know. Come on. What does it mean? No bad comes from above? Everything comes from above because it can't be any other way. So the answer is in the question itself. Everything that happens has to happen by him causing it to be. Well, if that's the case, how can it be bad? The word bad, properly understood, means that which should not happen. So death is not bad unless it's wrongful death. A death that should not happen. Labor pains are not bad unless the woman is not pregnant. then it shouldn't happen. Or false labor pains, right? An operation is not bad unless it's performed on the wrong patient. So nothing is bad in and of itself. Nothing. Things are tragic. Doesn't mean they're bad. Because bad, properly defined, is when something that shouldn't happen happens. They say, that shouldn't happen. No, that's bad. But in God's universe, what shouldn't happen can't happen. Because who caused it? The devil? I'm not allowed to believe that. The devil doesn't do anything on its own. So no bad comes from heaven means nothing that shouldn't happen ever happens from heaven. But human beings who have freedom of choice can choose what they should not have chosen. So all bad is in the human choice. It's not coming from above, because whatever God does is obviously necessary. And it should happen. Painful, but necessary. So divine providence is actually an important ingredient in mental health. If you think that things can happen that shouldn't happen, you're already depressed, at least anxious. What kind of world are we living in where things can happen that shouldn't happen? We couldn't survive it. We would either have to become very callous and fatalistic, or we have to believe nothing ever happens that shouldn't happen. Now, to make it really complicated, if I'm the one who can do things that shouldn't be done, and I do it to you, then something happened to you that shouldn't have happened, because I shouldn't have chosen that. So we have only each other to blame. But that's not true either. Our freedom of choice consists of a choice, not of an action. I don't have the freedom to act. I have the freedom to choose. But what results from my choice is completely out of my control. So a guy can decide to kill his neighbor, pick up the gun, point it at his victim, and pull the trigger. That's about all he can do. Now, what's going to happen to the intended victim? He has no idea and no control over what's going to happen. Because if it's meant to be, then the victim will be hurt. If it's not meant to be, it's not going to happen. So we are never a victim of someone else's free choice. And the one that articulated that idea most profoundly was Joseph. When his brothers come down to Egypt and they're sure that he's angry at them, and now that he's got all the power, he's going to take revenge. And so they apologize and beg for forgiveness. And what is Joseph's response? You had some pretty bad intentions, but that's your problem. Yeah. What happened to me comes from God, and I'm the viceroy of Egypt. Very, very clear, very explicit. Your bad intentions is your problem, and you got to settle that between you and God. But what happened to me didn't come from your bad choice. It came from God through your bad choice. So what did he do? He gave them presents. He said, since you facilitated unintentionally, but you did facilitate my becoming the viceroy of Egypt, I owe you. So here's some gifts. Can you imagine a person who really believes this in his heart? There's no anxiety ever. No need for pills. That doesn't mean there isn't any fear. We're still afraid of pain, even if it's meant to be. But we don't worry. We don't have that paranoia of, anything can happen at any time, and when will I ever be safe? That's crazy making. So divine providence applies to everything. The way the Baal Shem Tov saw it clearly. In fact, the sages a long time ago said, when a fish in the ocean swallows another fish, it's by divine plan. It was divinely orchestrated that this fish should swallow that fish. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. That's a little mind-boggling.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the concept of, I guess you might say, individual divine providence compared to, I believe it's in the Tanya that I read, that the wicked do not receive individual providence, but are subject to divine providence, or general providence, I should say, of nature, or just kind of, hey, you're not going to get that individual providence. Am I missing the mark? And if I'm not, what does wicked mean?
I'm really not sure. I'm not sure who is wicked and who is righteous, but the general divine providence means God is causing this to happen because he's the creator and nothing is going to happen without him. Individual divine providence means personal divine providence. God is causing it to happen not only because he's the creator, but also because he's your father. In other words, he's taking a personal interest. So he's not doing it because it's necessary. He's doing it because he wants to. I'm not sure the difference. If he does it because it's necessary, I think that's pretty good, no?
Right. It gets a point of, what are you worried about? Why are you worried about that?
Yeah. But it makes it a little sweeter if you know that God is on top of everything because he wants to be, not because he has to be. So it's all the relationship between us and God. I mean, the whole thing is just pure godliness. The question is this: if God already has a plan for every detail of my life, where do I get to have freedom of choice? How can I choose when God has already decided? People have struggled with this question for the longest time. All of history, probably. How do you reconcile divine providence with free choice? The Rebbe says very simply, you're assuming that God's plan is first, and then he gives you free choice. And how does that work? But who says that his plan is first? No, first he sees what you're going to choose and makes his plan accordingly. So your free choice is more important to him than his plan. So he lets you make your choices, and based on your choices, he will decide how to make that all play itself out, where your job is going to be, what your talents are going to be. All of that is to serve the outcome of your free choices. So technically speaking, does God know what I'm going to choose before I choose it? Another one of these classical questions, which is really not even a legitimate question. Does God know before? There is no before with God. He's timeless. So no, he doesn't know what you're going to do before you do it, because to him, you've already done it. The past and the future exist simultaneously with the present. So God sees you making the choices tomorrow, and so he plans accordingly today. So how does he know what you're going to choose? He sees you choosing it. So God doesn't know what you're going to choose before you choose it. God knows what you're going to choose before you know that you're going to choose it. So you're the one who doesn't know. There's one other interesting. There's a theory in physics, Heisenberg's theory of uncertainty. There is no cause and effect in the universe. In nature, there is no cause and effect. There's only probability. Will this chair that I'm sitting on be here a moment from now? We can't say for sure, because the atoms and the electrons are constantly in flux. They're leaving the chair by the trillions, and if they all decide to go at the same time, there will be no chair. Can we predict with any certainty that all the electrons are not going to leave at the same time? Probability, not cause and effect. So the study of nature is the study of probability, not laws of nature. There are no laws. We know that the chair will be here today because it was yesterday and the day before, so probably it'll be here today too. But that's all we can really say scientifically. In other words, God created a world out of his energy. The world has no rules. So the chair stays because God wants it to. That's the only reason. If God changes his mind, there's no chair. It's a pretty dramatic change in all of science. But I think the cutting edge, this theory was accepted by everybody. The world is a probability wave, not cause and effect. There's no guarantee that if you put water over a fire that it will boil. Probably, yes, it will probably boil. Why? Because we're used to it. But there's nothing in the fire and in the water that causes that reaction. So science is the observation of behavior patterns, not laws of nature. Which is really interesting because the ancient sages in the Talmud referred to nature as custom. The world behaves according to its custom, not according to its laws. So water has a habit of running downhill. Nobody knows why. So here's a good way of remembering this. There's a story in the Talmud where one of the sages had a daughter who prepared the house for Shabbat. And one of the important things back in those days was lighting candles so that you won't eat in the dark. So she fills the candle with vinegar, thinking that it's oil. And at the last minute, she lights it and then realizes it's not going to burn. It's vinegar. So she starts to cry. And her father said to her, "He who says oil should burn, today will tell the vinegar to burn." And the vinegar burned for 24 hours. So, is that a miracle? Yeah, that qualifies as a miracle. But what exactly is a miracle? So her father explained it to her. Why do you think oil burns? Because it's oil? There's nothing about oil that makes it burn. God tells oil to burn. So, a little exception for today. Today, God will tell the vinegar to burn instead of the oil. It's all the same to him. And it's all the same to the vinegar. You want me to burn? I'll burn. You don't want me? All right, whatever. In other words, the oil and the vinegar don't have rules. They do what they do because that's what God wants, which gives a whole new insight into divine providence. I always thought about this when watching a TV show or in a movie. The guy lights a cigarette, the cowboy, lights a cigarette, arrogant, smug. I'm thinking, you have no idea. You have no idea what God just did. Because why does tobacco burn? Because God tells it to. Every time you light a cigarette, God tells the tobacco to burn. It's an amazing vision of reality. So
Rabbi, sorry, Rabbi.
Is it a miracle? We think a miracle is a behavior that violates or goes against the rules of nature. There are no rules of nature. So what's a miracle? A miracle is you finally noticed who makes things happen. When the water flows uphill, you realize that there's a God. Otherwise, you think it's the water. So a miracle means an occasion where humans realize what's really happening.
Beautiful.
That's why miracles are inspiring.
Yeah.
You just had an insight. So miracles are happening all the time, but we don't notice it. So it's not a miracle. It's just God doing his thing.
Another question. In my studies, from a Christian point of view, the fear of God is completely different than the Chabad philosophy of that. And maybe it's a mistranslation, but as we know, Christians think fear of God is almost like an abusive father. If you don't do what I tell you to do, you're going to have pain and misery, and you're going to be punished, and all this fire and brimstone. Yet the Alter Rebbe says, no, the translation is not fear, it's awe of the greatness of our God. But there seems to be something a little bit more, I think, there than even just that. Like we have to, if and I get it, awe means humbleness. Where does, I think what's missing is, to me, is empowerment, motivation. I would assume being in awe of God's presence, that would motivate us. And maybe the motivation is within the awe of the greatness of God. But then I also remember reading not too long ago a Sikh of the Rebbe, and he had talked about that the true form of fear is not punishment, but the fear of losing a relationship with God. So can you just help clarify that for me?
Yeah, fear of punishment is not noble. There's nothing impressive about it. It's fear of pain. Animals are afraid of pain. So if fear of God means I'm afraid of burning, there's nothing right about that. It's just weakness. You're a coward. So why do we respect people who fear God? Oh, he's a God-fearing man. Well, he's a coward. He can't take pain, even theoretically. Even the thought of it scares him.
And who wants a relationship if this is what the relationship is based on?
Right. It's a very conditional relationship. Like, obey me or else. Well, that's not a relationship at all. So fear of God means fear of God, not fear of what he might do to you. And yes, it affects you. It's like I would do certain things when I'm alone. But if there's someone else in the room, I can't. I can't do it. There's somebody here. Somebody's watching. I can't do it. I'm not afraid of what they're going to do to me. It's just too embarrassing to behave this way in front of somebody. That's fear. Another person's presence doesn't allow me to behave sloppy, ugly, whatever, right? But there are certain people who I have absolutely no respect for. And in front of them, yeah, I would do it because I don't really care. I don't have enough respect for that person to affect my behavior. So, in front of your own father, come on, you wouldn't do that in front of your father. In front of your friend, yeah. So fear of God means in God's presence, I can't do that. I have too much respect for him. So it's not so much what I'm feeling about him. It's what it does to me. In his presence, I can't misbehave. I can't. Not because of consequence. I just can't. Which is very interesting because in front of our wives, we lower our standards. We have no respect for our wives. The same with husbands. We get callous with each other. That's what it means that familiarity breeds contempt. Contempt means, yeah, I'll do it in front of you. That's contempt. You wouldn't do it in front of anybody else. So you have less respect for your spouse than for anybody else. Why? Too familiar. So fear of God means if God is watching, I can't. So there are people who behave absolutely perfectly, flawlessly, because they're so aware of God's presence. But deep down inside, if God would just turn his back for a minute, I would commit the sin. So he's not a tzaddik.
Is that what sort of happened at Sinai after God spoke to the people? And not too long after that, the golden calf?
Yeah, that was more because they thought Moses was gone, which is interesting. With Moses present, they couldn't do it. When they thought Moses was gone, they said, okay.
But is there a way that maybe they got a little bit too comfortable with godliness?
It hadn't dawned, God's actual presence hadn't really dawned on them. Moses said God is present, and they believed him. They didn't really experience God directly until after the first Yom Kippur, by the way. The first Yom Kippur was when Moses went back up the mountain and came down with the second set of the 10 Commandments. And then they had learned their lesson. God is real even without Moses. Which is a strong argument against Christianity. You put so much significance on the Son of God that you, for all practical purposes, divorce yourself from the Father. Everything is the Son. Everything. So when do you get to the Father? So there's a good example of divine providence. Why was Moses late coming down off the mountain?
Yeah. And what about divine providence today? Look at what's happening in the world today.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of bad, but boy, there's a lot of good.
And the bad is bringing out the good in a very, very dramatic way. Excuse me.
Are we in the messianic age?
Oh, for sure. One of the signs is people are becoming more committed to serving God with no apparent reason. They're not indoctrinated. They're not raised with it. They're not brainwashed by it. It just happens spontaneously. And that's the way it's going to be in the days of Mashiach. And it's starting to happen.
I was recently having a conversation with one of my very, very good friends who's actually a pastor, a minister. And I was just talking to him generically about godliness and, mentioned some of the things that I've been studying, Torah, Tanya, and we were talking, I was talking about the concept of, he was talking concept of, Jews, not that Jews think they're superior, but, Jews are much different than the rest of us. And he sort of had a problem with that. But then I started thinking, okay, so you guys can't do things. You got 613 commandments, positive, negative. God creates everything. Everything. So if God says, don't eat that, don't touch that, don't do that, but I can do that. It's my job maybe to do that and to take what I guess now we're talking Kabbalah, take the sparks that are hidden or find the godly sparks and elevating that mortal worldly thing of like, you guys can't eat a cheeseburger or pork or whatever that it may be. But I can partake of that and turn that into godly service by eating it, then doing godly service because it's substance for me. Am I off the mark on that? Because that he sort of was like, wow, I'd never thought of that.
True.
When are sort of non-Jews going to, I guess, understand this? When are we going to be able to be taught that? Because to me, that makes all the sense in the world. And I know that's Kabbalah, and not too many people. I didn't even know that the word existed before I met you, fine gentlemen.
Well, Kabbalah used to be a secret. It shouldn't be anymore. Hasn't been like 300 years. So yeah, it's getting out there, and it's exciting, and people are really inspired. So basically what you're saying is everything created in the world serves God's purpose.
If we
including pork.
Yeah.
Just not for Jews.
Yeah, but somebody has to take that creation and make it godly. It's not godly within itself, but it could hide godly sparks within it. It needs to be elevated, ascended, right?
Yes. Godly sparks, by the way, sounds very mysterious and mystical. The godly spark means God created it. So there must be some divine purpose. That's the spark. The purpose for which it exists is the spark that gives it life and gives it purpose. So everything that exists has a spark. So the word spark actually means potential. I think King Solomon said, there is nothing God created in vain. Nothing. Which is fantastical. Like every single mosquito has to exist. Yep. Because if it didn't, God wouldn't have created it. Does God love creating mosquitoes? Probably not. But they serve a purpose. They got to be there. Every one of them. How many stars do you need in heaven? Every one of them. That's what in the Psalms it says, God calls each star by its own name. That's a pretty individual attention. Actually, God creates it with its name. The name is the creative formula that makes it happen. So God said, let there be light. And there was light. Well, how does that work? The word light didn't mean anything. So God said, let there be light, and there was light. How did light know that we were talking to it? Let there be light. Talking to me? So it's not just a word. The Hebrew letters that make up the word for light is the H2O formula that describes the object that God wants to create. So it's not just a word, it's a creative formula. If God had rearranged the letters, something else would have come into existence.
Interesting.
Will pork be kosher for Jews when Mashiach comes?
Pork will be kosher when it starts to chew its cud. If it doesn't chew its cud, it's not kosher.
But it's possible that it'll start chewing its cud. That's why it's called chazer in Hebrew, which means to return, because it's going to return to the status of being kosher.
It will return to the Jewish menu.
When you guys are talking about the word God needs our mitzvahs, God needs us, could it be that the struggle for a word, it just can't be defined? It's a divine, it's really a divine creation that Hashem God is created. I mean, it's almost, I mean, we just don't understand. We can't put labels on things well. And now we're talking about a divine plan, a divine need or divine want or whatever the word. We're messing around with English words, but we're talking about divineness here. And is that why we're possibly struggling with trying to define a word that everybody will be happy with, that'll satisfy them?
There are some words that are better than the word need, but people don't react to it. Does God need a mitzvah? Okay, let's put it differently. Is the mitzvah essential to God, or is it optional?
No, it's essential.
Oh, it's essential.
Yeah.
Oh, so he has to have it. No, he doesn't have to. So wait a minute, try this again. Is it essential? Yes, it's very essential. Oh, so he has to have it. He can't be any other way. Oh no, it's optional. The only way you get people to actually stop and think is to say, no, he needs it. It's not optional. So the word need doesn't mean needy.
Right.
It means necessary. I don't know if it's a good example. When a person can't breathe, he needs to breathe. Well, oh, I need to breathe. What if you're perfectly healthy? Do you not need to breathe? When you're breathing fine, do you not need to breathe? Is the need to breathe only when you're being denied the ability to breathe? I need to have a wife. Oh, actually, I am married. I have a wife. So now I don't need her anymore. So how do we describe the fact that if you're happily married, you need your wife? If need means you're lacking something, I'm not lacking. I have a wife. So I don't need her? Maybe I need her more because she's my wife. But really, if you want to get to the heart of the issue, in the beginning, there was only him. We all agree about that. Okay, and then what happened? Then the people were stuck at the edge of the water. They couldn't go forward. They couldn't go back. The Egyptians were chasing them. So God had to intervene and split the sea. No, wait a minute. Where did a sea come from? Where did water come from? What happened that disturbed God's exclusive existence? He was the only thing and he was everything. And then what happened? That's the most fundamental question. What disturbed that perfectly idyllic condition? There was just him and he is everything. So, well, then he contracted his light. Well, no, wait a minute. Why would he do that? In other words, what stimulated creation when there is nothing there? Nothing exists. Where did the motivation for creation come from? So it has to be. It's an internal, essential process. It's internal combustion because there was nothing else. So the catalyst couldn't have been a collision of two beings. There was only him. So what started the fire? Him. So he created the world in order to have a relationship with us. That need for the relationship, where did it come from? It didn't come from, it's just him. Because there was only him.
Why can't some people not grasp the concept that we, the creation, humans, are essential and important to God? Very, very essential and important. Matter of fact, the whole thing doesn't work without us because that's how essential we are to why he created all of this. It's almost like a lack of self-esteem of humans to say, we can't be that important to God. There's 8 billion of us.
Exactly.
But yet, I mean, we are. And we know we are. We know we are.
Well, part of the misunderstanding is we don't know why God created a universe. And to say he created it for us, we're a tiny little piece of the universe. So if I don't know why God created the universe, I certainly don't know why he created me. In other words, we don't think The universe was created for us. God created heaven and earth. And then on the sixth day, he added humans. So it doesn't seem right that he created the world for us. So I say God essentially needed to have oceans and clouds, and it doesn't make any sense. Why? Put the people first. The clouds came later, not chronologically, but in terms of significance. That's why we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, not on the day God started creation, on the day God completed creation by created human beings. So Rosh Hashanah is actually the sixth day of creation. And we call it the beginning of everything. So part of the problem is we are insignificant to the rest of creation. So how could we be the reason for creation? So when we get past being impressed with mountains and Grand Canyons, say, no, all of that is unnecessary. It's just there for us. We are necessary. That sounds pretty arrogant.
Yeah.
But I was speaking to somebody about God needs recently, a pretty knowledgeable person, and they said, you can't talk in absolutes like that. God needs, like, nothing's in absolute. There's interpretations and there's different interpretations. And when he said it in a certain sense, it made sense. Like, it does seem wrong to talk in absolutes. But then I countered, I said, well, is there a God? And he said, yes. Oh, you're talking in absolutes. There's a God. I'm just saying, and we are necessary to him. Is there a point to his argument saying that we can't talk in absolutes and that everything has different levels of interpretation?
Well, that's the beginning of all immorality. Is murder absolutely wrong or just sometimes? Is it absolutely wrong or it just depends on your opinion, interpretation? If you say it's not absolutely wrong, then you're talking to the wrong person. And by the way, don't turn your back on him because you can't trust him. Murder is not absolutely wrong. No, it destroys everything. The one thing we know for sure about the Torah is that it's absolute. Nothing else is. That's what makes the Torah different. Kind of a backward argument. But, by the way, I was reading these statistics recently, a couple of days ago. Bible sales are up 60%. Attendance in churches and mosques and synagogues up 20%. Just in the last year. So is God becoming more real to us? Absolutely. And who caused this? Who caused an interest in a Bible? Nobody. Nobody. The media discourages you from reading the Bible. Even ministers, priests, and rabbis discourage you from reading the Bible. Because if it produced you, I don't want to hear more about it.
In academia, we spend too much time at conferences. Instead of, we understand the concept, we understand the theory, we get stuck on, well, can you define that? And I defined that as this. And just like, I guess you could say today, maybe some people are going to get mad, but the whole, well, you have your truth, Rabbi, and I have my truth. And like you said, it leads to a road that is going to serve nobody well at all.
That's right.
And I think that even with this, we understand I think the whole concept, every time, and I've watched almost every video that you and Rabbi Yanni have talked about and had people on, nobody has a problem when you explain the concept of essential, important part that we play and are essential to God. Not that he's essential to us, that we're essential to him. Nobody has a problem with that. But want, need, it's like, can we just stop? Why don't we focus on the phenomenon, maybe? And again, maybe it's such a divine phenomenon, we can't define it in our words. I don't know.
Well, it comes down to a very basic question. Is it possible that the world will just destroy itself tomorrow? Is it possible? No, it's not. Well, God can destroy it, can't he? Yeah, but he will not. How do you know? He can do whatever he wants. Yeah, he does whatever he wants, and he wants a world. Well, he'll change his mind. No, he doesn't change his mind. It's essential. So without that, you're living in a dream state. It could all be over. You wake up tomorrow morning and it's all gone. So what's real? In academia, nothing is real. This one professor says, we professors, we live in our minds. Actually, no. The only reason we need our minds is to get us to a conference. The mind is our transportation to get us to the next conference. That's what the mind for. Anyway, so it is so fundamental to everything. Life's purpose, mental health, understanding life, why we're here. It's the basis of everything. And to undermine that, we're undermining everything.